I'm truly humbled by what my brother has said about me tonight, and I'm honored to be here and address this club. As Joel said, I've had an opportunity down through the years to travel great distances and speak to different groups and different environments, different professions. Spoken to quarterback clubs, touchdown clubs all around Alabama and the Florida Panhandle, but I've never had the honor to address you, my club, my friends, my neighbors. And I wanted to do something tonight that would be a little bit different, something that hopefully I could leave some things with you that you could take from this place and perhaps use them, either to teach your children or your grandchildren, or to put them to use in your everyday life. When I was invited to discuss the qualities that made Coach Bryant a legend for the ages, I concluded that it was because he was the Grandmaster of mind over matter. Some might ask, who was Paul Bryant? Why does it matter, especially 30 years after he's been laid to rest? Well, that question is what I hope to answer over the next few minutes. To his family, he was Papa. To his friends, he was Paul. To his players and coaches, he was Coach Bryant. And to the masses, he was known as Bear, a name he never really liked. The nickname was given to him when, as a dare and for $1, he entered a ring and wrestled a grizzly bear as part of a carnival show passing through town. Unfortunately, he never got his dollar. But he did get a nickname that stuck with him for life. At that time, Paul Bryant was a big, awkward, dirt-poor farm boy who had been told by his high school coach that playing football could be a ticket off the farm into a better way of life. Paul Bryant had not grown up as a sports enthusiast. As a matter of fact, he played in the first football game he ever saw. Having no football shoes, he took an old worn-out pair of brogans. For you non-Southerners and city types, brogans are high-top work shoes. And he had a cobbler put cleats on them. That was his football shoes. Playing tight end for the Fordyce Red Bugs earned Paul Bryant a scholarship to play football at the University of Alabama. And at that time, no one could have imagined that his train ride to Tuscaloosa would become the first chapter in the creation of a legend. Perhaps the most memorable event during his playing years was the time he had a broken fibula in one of his legs. That's the small bone on the outside of the leg. His mental toughness and his desire to play against what was then Alabama's primary rival, the University of Tennessee, drove him to take a pair of pliers and scissors and cut the cast off his leg and play the entire ball game with his leg unsplinted, against his doctor's advice, of course. People who have followed the history of football know that Coach Bryant coached at Vanderbilt, at Maryland, at Kentucky, and then to Texas A&M. When asked by a reporter why he accepted the offer to leave Texas A&M to become the head football coach and athletic director at his alma mater, he simply answered, "Mama called." I could stand here and tell you about the storehouse of conference national championships that he won as a coach and all the accolades bestowed upon him. But I'm not here to talk about Coach Bryant's records. Rather, I'm here to reveal little-known facts that made him the winner he was, and why the things he said and did a long time ago are as relevant today as they were then. On many occasions, I was actually with Coach when reporters would ask him, "Coach, what's the secret to your success?" In traditional fashion, he would glare at the reporter and with his low, gruff voice say, "If I knew, I sure as hell wouldn't tell you." Well, I asked him one day why he gave the same answer to every reporter, and he said, "No matter what I say, the guy won't write it the way I said it." And he said, "The time will come when one day somebody who knows the answers will reveal them." Well, I'm not saying I know all the answers, but I know a few of them, and that's what I want to try to share with you tonight. What made him different from other coaches? How was he able to take a losing football program and in a very short time turn it into a championship program? How was he able to take players that were pretty good and have them come to believe that they were better than they actually were? And how to coach them to perform at levels above their God-given talents and skills? And would his method still work today? That's a question to think about. Over the past several days, I sat down at my computer and wrote down things that Coach Bryant incorporated into what I call his system of winning. When he talked to us players, he was quick to point out the things that we were learning at the time could and should be carried into life after football. I've been able to condense the Bryant system of winning into 46 short lessons. And at the top of the list is number 1, create a plan that you believe will help you achieve your goal and reduce that plan to writing. And be sure that you have a backup plan should the first one fail. Number 2, learn the rules of the game and abide by them. Penalties and sanctions give your opponent an edge he didn't earn and does not deserve. Number 3, be relentless in the pursuit of your goals, whatever it is that you wish to master. Number 4, play to win, but play fair. Number 5, football, like life, is a game of wits, matching the ingenuity of will of one contestant against the other. Number 6, the only advantage the offense has over the defense is knowing what the snap count is. And the only advantage the defense had over the offense at the time that I played was the defense could use their hands. Now today, both offense and defense can use their hands. So even that has changed. Number 7, a coach, a player, or team can maximize the chance of being successful by minimizing the chance of failure. Let me repeat that. A coach, player, or team can maximize the chance of being successful by minimizing the chance of failure. Now, this was one of his favorite sayings. It seems that every day he stressed the fact that the key to winning is to keep from losing. As simple as it sounds. I'll come back to that a little bit later. Number 8, before you go into the contest, he taught, know your strengths and weaknesses and play to your strengths. Number 9, when a decision has to be made quickly, go with a logical alternative, the one that has the highest percentage of succeeding. Over time, the percentage play becomes the right choice. An example of that, and you see it every Saturday, going for 4th down on your own side of the 50-yard line. Now, sometimes great players can overcome decisions made by poor coaching. And you will see that from time to time, you make it on 4th down on your own side of the field. But do it enough times and it will come back to bite you. Because when you don't make it on 4th down, you give up field advantage of some 40 yards. And you can sometimes shift the momentum of the game. That is a low percentage play over a period of time and over a period of years. Whatever it is that you intend to do, surround yourself with good, honest people. People who are loyal to you. People who are willing to buy into your system. People who are capable of teaching others in your organization how to execute your plan. Number 11, refuse to tolerate excuses. Demand accountability. Push your team to the limit. Coach and I were talking about this earlier. Make them throw up. It's the only way to teach them that they can perform when they're exhausted. Coach and I were talking over here earlier tonight. Every year, Coach Bryant put us through what we called and he called the gut check. We never knew when it was going to occur, but we knew at some time during the year it was going to occur. Generally on the hottest, most humid, most sultry day of the year. Now what a gut check was is that he would run us and work us to the point to where somebody passed out. And at that point, practice was half over. He put you through something you did not think you could endure. And what he was doing was really teaching us that the body can go on long after the mind thinks that it can. And that way you never get beat in the fourth quarter because you think you're tired. That was one of the keys to his secret to success. Number 12, and when you're in charge, accept responsibility for your actions as well as the actions of those you manage. We're seeing a little bit of that today in the Penn State situation. Number 13, be quick to share success. He often said, if we win the game, you did it. If we get tied, we did it. If we lose, I did it. Coach Bryant was famous for saying on his weekly television show, the only plays I called during the game were the ones that didn't work. Number 14, be willing to adapt to changing circumstances. And yes, he did convert to the wishbone during the 1969, the late 1960s, when Alabama had 2 6-5 seasons. He realized that what he was doing with the personnel that he had was not working, and so he changed to meet the circumstances. Number 15, rehearse the act of changing courses until it becomes second nature. Little things we worked on every single week. Giving the other team a safety. Now you might think, why would you give 2 points? Well, if you're 5 points ahead or you're 4 points ahead and you're backed up and a field goal will beat you, don't take the risk to kick out of your own end zone with tight punt. We would line up, and this was one of my favorite plays, as a matter of fact. As a center, my job was to snap the ball into the stands. See how far I could snap it into the stands. I love that play. I could get it about 40 rows high at those times. But you gave up 2 points so you could get out to the 20-yard line and get a free kick and move them back, and they'll have less chance. They have to go the whole length of the field rather than to get the ball on your own 35-yard line and start from there. The man was a master at understanding the game and the strategy and playing field position. Also, we don't see this anymore, but he would quick kick. He would sometimes turn around and quick kick on first down when the other team least expects it. And sometimes out of a quick kick, you can get 60 or 70 yards from the roll. So he always was playing field position. Number 16, be willing to give a little to gain a lot. Now, this is actually how I made the traveling squad. I went there as a defensive linebacker and made the starting team. Leroy Jordan was on one side, and I played the other linebacker in the preseason as a sophomore. Preseason drill, I made a tackle, and my arms went numb. They said, get up and do it again. I went up and got it, did it again, and next time my arms went numb, I couldn't move them. Long story short, I broke my neck, and I was out of a job. So I'd been a center in high school, and I started hanging around the kickers. And I would go over and snap the ball to the punters. Well, Coach was a stickler for little details. He walked around with a stopwatch on the practice field all the time. He had it decided, or he had figured out, that if he took the fastest man that we had on our team, who was a sprinter on the track team as well, and he put him where the ball would be snapped, and he put a point where the ball would be kicked from, and he would time over and over and over again how quickly it took that guy to get from the line of scrimmage to that point. And he concluded that if you could get a ball off in less than 2 seconds on a punt, even if a guy broke free, the punt would never be blocked. I could get the ball to the kicker faster than any of the other centers could. And we had a kicker that couldn't kick it as far as the other kickers. We had kickers could kick the ball 45, 50 yards. This guy couldn't kick it but 35 to 36 yards on the average. But he could get the ball off quicker. He gave a little to gain a lot. And we never got a punt blocked the entire time we were there. This was how he had everything figured out. Number 17, scout yourself. Look for tendencies that your opponent might take advantage of. He had a retired coach that was a friend of his come to practice every day and start watching and looking for tendencies. And what he concluded one day is that when Joe Namath broke the huddle and came to the line of scrimmage, if it was a pass play, he licked his fingers. And this coach picked up on that and pointed it out. And so then coach pointed it out to Joe and broke the habit. But your opponents will pick up on those things. But if you don't scout yourself, you'll never realize the things sometimes that your opponents will pick up on. Number 18, penalties are costly. When rules are violated, whether intentionally or unintentionally, everyone associated with a program pays a price. That occurs when recruiting rules that lead to sanctions occur. One of the things that drove him crazy and today drives me crazy is blocking from behind penalties. You see it every Saturday. The simplest thing in the world that a football player can learn is front from back. And yet you see it and sometimes in 2 or 3 times in a ball game where somebody running down the field will see a man's back and push him from behind. And it negates a touchdown, it negates a great run, it causes a penalty. It's one of the most costly penalties in sports. If I was a coach, I'd take that guy and run him up and down the sidelines to embarrass him so he'd never do it again. But that's the big play that will cost you and your team tremendously. And the other thing that you see sometimes is a person losing his temper and getting a personal foul penalty. 15 yards. Think about what it takes for 11 players to have a running back make a 15-yard gain, and yet one player with one hothead movement can negate what it took his whole team to gain. And you see those things happen over and over again. He absolutely didn't tolerate those things. And if you got him, you sat down for the rest of the game. He didn't put you back in if you got one of those kinds of penalties. Number 19, apply rules equally. Second chances are allowed. But in a winning environment, there's no such animal as third and fourth chances. Joe Namath again, 1963. Team rules, no drinking. Joe was seen with a beer can in his hand at a basketball game in the parking lot. Coach Bryant called him in and he said, "Joe, I've been told you had a beer can in your hand. The basketball game, is that true?" He said, "Yes, sir." He said, "I'll see you. You're through for the season." There wasn't any question about it. Joe didn't play the last 2 games of the season in 1963. He treated everybody equally. He didn't care whether you were a starter or whether you were a scout team person. Win or lose, number 20, win or lose, evaluate the performance of everyone involved in determining the outcome of a performance, including yourself, and be honest with yourself and correct mistakes immediately. Number 21, whenever possible, use constructive criticism and disciplining subordinates, but be prepared to separate bad apples from the team. He told me one time, he said, "Gaylon, you've seen me run off players that had more talent than any of you guys that stayed." But he said they were bad for the program, and I had no choice than to let them go. Number 22, know your team, know your staff. For some of them, a pat on the back is more effective than a kick in the rear. And the opposite is also true. Number 23, respect your opponent, but never be intimidated. Outwork, outsmart, and outlast him in the fourth quarter. And I'll come back to that again in a moment. Finishing strong, number 24. Finishing strong can often overcome a lackluster beginning. Losing focus and taking a foot off the throttle when you're ahead allows those trailing behind to catch up and pass you. We've had 2 great examples of this in the last 2 games between Alabama and Auburn. 2 years ago in Jordan-Hare, Auburn jumped out ahead, looked like that they were going to just run away with a game, and they stopped doing the things that caused them to get ahead in the ball game. And Alabama came back in the fourth quarter and won the game. Exactly the same thing happened in Tuscaloosa last year. Jumped out ahead and backed off. When you're ahead, you got to keep your foot to the pedal. You can't start celebrating before it's over. Teams are too good today. So you cannot take your foot off the throttle. Talk is cheap, 25. Great aspirations are easy to verbalize, but the devil is in the details and in the doing. 26. To achieve great things, pay attention to the little things. If you do pay attention to the little things, the big things will take care of themselves. Coach was a stickler for every player carrying out his assignment on every play, lining up correctly to avoid illegal formation penalties, moving only when the ball was snapped, transferring the ball from the center to the quarterback and from the quarterback to the running back or to the receiver, staying on a block for just one more second, wrapping up when attempting to tackle a ball carrier, and holding on until somebody else arrives to help you. Looking the ball into your hands as you prepare to catch it. How many times in a ball game do you see a receiver try to turn and take his eyes off the ball and drop a pass that he should catch simply because of the little things that he didn't do? Putting both hands on the ball in traffic. These are all little things that this man talked about every single day at every single practice, to the point that they became habitual, so that you never had any excuse for not knowing them. It's the little things, number 27. It's the little things, the fundamentals of the game, that give a football team the best chance to win, even against a superior opponent. Giving a little something extra, one of his favorite terms, a little something extra. He said extra. Giving a little something extra on every play. Something that your opponent is likely to be unwilling to give. May be the difference between who wins the game. Number 28, live in the moment, but expect the unexpected. He talked a lot about quick change, an interception, a block kick, a fumble. He said, be ready for the quick change. If you're on offense and you get a pass interception, all of a sudden you're a defender. You become the defensive unit right away. If you're on defense and you intercept a pass, all of a sudden you're the offensive unit. Quick change. Be prepared for it. Be ready. Number 29, in preparing for a contest, play out the alternatives in your mind and know what you will do when the unexpected raises its ugly head. People wondered oftentimes what he talked about in the pregame meetings that we had before we went out to play. He never gave a pep talk. He never raised his voice. His voice stayed in that little low, monotone, gruff, rumbly voice the whole time. He said, I hope they come out all fired up. He said, if they do, they jump up, tears in their eyes. He said, that's just what we want. He said, because on that kickoff, you just pick one of them out and you brat him, you knock him right on his back, and then you reach down and put your hand out and say, you help him up and say, I'll be right back. That was the kind of pep talk he gave. And the other thing he would always say, he said, before you go out there today, I want you to have a plan. He said, I want you to know what you're going to do when you look up at the scoreboard and the 2 minutes gone in the game and you're 21 points ahead. I want you to know right now what you're going to do when that happens. How are you going to play the rest of the game? He said, and also I want you to know what you're going to do if you look up there and you're 21 points behind. What are you going to do? Have a plan. Be prepared for it. Don't be surprised by anything. Number 30, anyone who has played or coached the game knows that football, like life, is a consecutive series of choices, each one building on the previous choice. In sports and in life, a person can choose not only to be a winner, but to associate with winners. Winning is a habit, and so is losing. Number 31, when you're in charge and it becomes apparent that you have recruited or hired a loser, get rid of him or her as quickly as humanly possible. Losers will destroy an organization as surely as locusts will destroy a crop. Number 32. In getting people to follow your lead, respect is more important than popularity. Many a talented loser enjoys popularity with the masses. I could give you a list of those right now from the entertainment field, but I will. Lindsay Lohan, Britney Spears, Sean Penn, Alex Baldwin, and I could go on and on and on. Those are losers in life, and yet they're popular. Number 33, the journey to the top of the mountain is not a single giant leap, but a matter of taking one small and well thought out step at a time. It generally takes 3 to 4 years when a losing coach is fired before the next coach can be expected to win championships. However, an improvement in the intensity of play should be expected immediately. Number 34. We're almost done. Even under the worst of circumstances, find something positive to build on. You're not beaten until you decide that you are. One of the stories that I like to tell is written in the book, and I want to share that with you right now. Stop for just a moment, change course a little bit. Alabama had won the national championship in 1961. 1962, I was a sophomore, and we went into the season ranked number 1, and we flew through the first 7 games. The 8th game of the season, we flew through the first 8 games. The 9th game of the season, we went to Georgia Tech. We played in Atlanta, played Georgia Tech. We played a terrible football game that day. We came from behind in the 4th quarter. We were behind 7-0, and we scored a touchdown with about 3 or 4 minutes left to go in the game. Decided to go for 2. Went for 2 and didn't make it. Kicked off. Leroy Jordan caused a fumble. We got the ball. We're driving the ball back down the field again. We're on the 16-yard line, 3rd down, with less than a minute to go in the game. Timeout. Go to the sidelines, and the brain trust starts talking about what do we do. It's 3rd down. Do we kick now? Do we kick on 4th down? They finally talked Coach Bryant into, let's try one more pass play, and if it's incomplete, we kick the field goal on 4th down. We had Mr. Automatic, Tim Davis. We knew we were going to win the game. There wasn't any question about whether we were going to win it. We knew we were. We decided to try one more pass to build battle, and Coach told the quarterback, look in the end zone. If battle is open, if he's wide open, hit him. If he's not, throw the ball over his head, and we line up and kick the field goal. Well, you don't know Bill Battle. The quarterback was trying to throw it over his head, but Battle jumped higher than he's ever jumped in his life and got a hand on the ball, and it fluttered right into a Georgia Tech guy's arm. Interception. Game over. National championship down the tube. Well, you can imagine, I've been promised that ring. Joel mentioned it. If I go to Alabama before you leave there, you're going to have a national championship ring, and I thought I had mine. And we were distraught. We went to the dressing room, and you can imagine we were there with our heads in our hands and crying, thinking we'd lost everything. And Coach Bryant walked in, and we usually knelt and said the Lord's Prayer at the end of the ball game. On this day, he walked in and said, take a knee. And he led us in prayer. Prayer was short. He said, dear God, let these young men find a way to forgive me. For if I had stayed at home, they would have emerged here as champions today. All of a sudden, the atmosphere in that dressing room changed. It went from one of pity and remorse to one of, what did I just hear? He didn't miss a block. He didn't drop a pass. He didn't make a fumble. He didn't do anything. But he took total credit for losing the game. When he stood up, first time I've ever heard these words, he said, you men didn't get beat out there today. Time just ran out on you. First time I'd ever heard it. Since then, it's been used by a lot of people. He said, now if you'll pick up, he said, we play Auburn in Birmingham next week. He said, now if you feel sorry for yourself, you'll go out there, you'll get beat again next week. He said, but if you'll pick up where you left off, out there on that field this afternoon, just a few minutes ago, we'll be okay. Well, I want to tell you, the feeling on this team went from here to there. The man always knew the right thing to say. I wondered why, and I found out years later. I'll try to come back to that in a moment if somebody will ask me that question when we finish up. We did. We went out the next week and we won the game, I think 34-6 or 34-3. And then we went to the Orange Bowl and played Oklahoma. Oklahoma had become number 1 when we dropped out of the number 1 slot. And in those days, the championship was decided before the bowl game. We went to the Orange Bowl and we beat Oklahoma 17-0. So we took a situation where we were down and he flipped it over, where we ended up on a high note. And that's the way the man was. Number 35. In everything that you do, keep an even temperament, regardless of what happens. Never let the highs get too high, nor the lows too low. Number 36. Win with class and dignity. Lose with class and dignity. The two are opposite sides of the same coin. 37. And during the contest, remember the classic lyric from a Kenny Rogers ballad, The Gambler. Never count your money while sitting at the table. There's time enough for counting when the dealing's done. You see it every Saturday. You see it every Sunday, where some player will make what he considers a great play, and he gets up and draws attention to himself. Now today, you don't see them stand up in college. They can't stand up, but you'll see them run out of the huddle, run out of the pile right quick, and show their number. They don't do the hooping and holler. But that's what the guy was supposed to do in the first place. That's why he was there. All this celebrating during the ball game, there's a time to celebrate. And I'll talk about that in a moment. The time to celebrate, matter of fact, it comes right next. It's the next one. Regardless of the outcome at the end of the game, Bryant coach teams were instructed to run off the field and go directly to the dressing room. There, we did all of our celebrating or grieving with the people who were directly involved in the outcome of the contest and in private. The coach told us, do all of that in the dressing room, and when you go outside those doors, hold your head up high, look and act like a champion, regardless of whether or not you won or lost the game. The people standing outside should never know whether you were the winner or the loser. Conduct yourself the same way under both circumstances. 41. There's a distinctive difference between pride and arrogance. Pride is the personal satisfaction that comes with being prepared and performing a task well. Arrogance creates a false sense of self-worth. It is a fatal character flaw and a precursor to destruction. Probably the best example that I can think of in recent times were the University of Miami teams in the 80s and 90s. The most arrogant group of college players, I think, that I ever saw. And we had an opportunity to play them for the national championship one year. And prior to the game, when the Alabama team came out on the field, they were all coached. They rehearsed this. When the Alabama team showed up, they all turned their backs to the Alabama team and faced away, showing disrespect, I guess you would say. Alabama waxed them that day. As a matter of fact, there was a player, a wide receiver on the Miami team, that bragged all week. He boasted all week about there wasn't a receiver on it was not a defensive back on the Alabama team that could cover him. You might remember the play when a long pass was thrown down the sidelines and the guy was 5 yards ahead, looked like he was going to run in for a touchdown, when out of nowhere comes a guy named Antonio Langan. Not only does he run him down, but he takes the ball away from him. And the guy falls on the ground, and he looks up, and Antonio's going the other way with the football. So you've got to be a little careful about boasting what you're going to do during a football game. Pride and arrogance are two different things. Number 42. Football, like life, is a contact sport. When you get knocked down, get up and dust yourself off. There's no shame in getting knocked down. The dishonor is in staying down or quitting. 43. Life is like a roller coaster, encircling a treacherous course of curves, climbs, and falls. It is not a high-speed train darting across a flat plain. 44. When all is said and done, your reputation is all you have. A good name takes a lifetime to build, but can be destroyed in an instant. Unfortunately, we've seen some of that within the last few weeks, too. But during the time that I was at Alabama, Coach Bryant was falsely accused of two different things by the Saturday Evening Post, which was a very famous magazine at one time. Saturday Evening Post wrote an article about Coach Bryant teaching brutality. He never taught brutality, he taught toughness. But they went after him personally, and he sued the Saturday Evening Post and won. paid a big chunk of money. Well, about 2 years later, all of a sudden, a guy comes forward and says he overheard a conversation between Coach Bryant and Coach Wally Butts, the head coach of the University of Georgia, and they fixed the Alabama-Georgia game because Butts gave all the secrets up to Coach Bryant before the play. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I played in that ball game. And I can tell you, we didn't know one thing about Georgia that we didn't know about every other team that we played. It was a matter of scouting report. And he said we were calling out their plays before they ran them. Listen, when you scout people and you see them line up in a certain formation year after year after year, and on third down in that same formation, you say, watch out for such and such. You do that. But Coach Bryant sued again and absolutely closed down the Saturday Evening Post. He beat them twice. He protected his good name, and there's nothing wrong with that. Somebody goes after you falsely, fight with all of your might. That's all you've got is your good name. Number 45, do not allow the critic, the naysayer, the devil's disciple to distract you from your goal. Focus on the good and positive, but be vigilant and keep a watchful eye out for the vultures lurking in the trees, waiting for you to display one moment of weakness. Number 47, and this is probably the most recognized admonition attributed to Coach Bryant. If you believe in yourself and you have dedication and pride and never quit, you'll be a winner. The price of victory is high, but so are the rewards. He was living proof that words can be converted into action and that actions speak louder than words. I never asked Coach Bryant if he was familiar with a book written by a 1990s physician by the name of Dr. James Allen. The book is entitled As a Man Thinketh. Dr. Allen's book was surely the precursor of all self-help books since. One sentence summed up the message that the writer was trying to deliver. That sentence is, the body is the servant of the mind. Whatever thoughts the mind allows inside, the body responds to them. Negative thoughts create negative outcomes. Positive thoughts create positive outcomes. And that was the genius of Paul Bryant. He mastered mind over matter until his heart gave out. I was with him following the 3:15 game. It came against Auburn, and in the game, I went to the dressing room to check on him because the last 2 to 3 years of his life, Coach Bryant was not a well man. Matter of fact, we carried a cardiac defibrillator on the field at practice, on the ball games, on the bus. His greatest fear is that he was going to drop dead on the sidelines and create a scene. And we really and truly didn't know what he might do just that. He was that in poor health. I went into the dressing room after the game to check on him. And when I went in, the players were in one dressing room and the coaches were in another, and there was a little corner back in the coaches' area. And so when I went to the door, Billy Varney, who was his assistant, sidekick, best friend, was there. And I said, Billy, where's Coach? He said, Doc, he's back there. You need to go check on him. I went back there, and he was sitting in a straight back chair, and he was just all humped over like this, and he was pale, and I went over and knelt down, and I put my hand on his knee. I said, Coach, you okay? And he looked up at me, he said, Gaylon, I'm really not. And about that time, Clem Griska came to the coach's dressing room back there, and he said, Coach, President Reagan's on the phone, wants to congratulate you. You've seen these little dolls, little bitty things where you pull a string and they all collapse and you turn the string loose and they'd all stand up like that. This man went from looking like a rag mop. In a matter of about 30 seconds, he began to gather himself. And he took a deep breath and he sat up straight. And then he got up and he stood there for a moment and he walked out of that dressing room and walked through the players' dressing room to the telephone and stood there and talked to Coach Bryant. There's a picture in the book with him of the telephone in his hand. He's talking to the President of the United States at that time. And he's smiling. And after he talked, he came back in that room and he sat down in that chair and he just went, boom. He could pull it together. He was the toughest man I've ever seen in my life. At a time when he was really struggling for life. Most people never knew it. But he was a winner. Not because of the things he said, but because he believed in his heart of hearts that he was a winner. And he refused to associate with anyone who wasn't. I can honestly tell you that when he was my coach, our teams never went into a game wondering if we were going to win. We fully expected to win every game, and that's half the battle. Individually, we were not all great players. I certainly wasn't. But together, we were a very good team. Most of our opponents had more raw material than we did, but we had a secret weapon on our side, an unwavering desire to win, and a weapon that had been instilled in us by our coach. In our minds, the only question to be answered on the field of play was how well would we play on the way to victory, and would we please our coach with our performance. Toward the end of the game, if we were behind on the scoreboard, if a touchdown would win the game, and if there was time for just one more play, we expected to score that touchdown on that play and win the game. And on a lot of occasions during those years, we did just that. Our team was called the Cardiac Kids because we played that way and won a lot of games in the last minute or the last second. But it was just a matter of mind over matter. We had been trained by the Grandmaster. In the 4 years I was at Alabama, this is not about me, this is about the coach. But the 4 years that I was there, our teams only lost 4 games. We never lost by as much as a touchdown. Lost one game 7-6, one 10-8, one 10-6, and one 22-17. By a total of 12 points in 4 years, we lost 4 games. And in every case, we were literally knocking on the doorstep when time on the clock expired. And there was a reason for it. At the beginning of the 4th quarter, Coach Bryant asked each player to make a public pledge to the people who mattered most in his life. Today you see it in every game from Pee-wee football all the way to the pros. Whenever the 4th quarter comes, people raise their 4 fingers. 90% of the people have no clue what that means. That occurred when I was at Alabama. When at halftime, in one game when we were behind, he said, I'm going to challenge you guys to something. When the 4th quarter begins, and he said, don't you do this if you don't feel it in your heart. But if you are willing to turn to your mom and daddy up there in those stands, and you say a pledge to them, we're going to win the 4th quarter. The 4th quarter is ours. We're going to do whatever it takes to win the 4th quarter. He said, if you've got the guts to do it, you turn up there, first of all, to your mom and daddy, and you raise 4 fingers. And he said, then you turn and you look at your teammates, and you say, I'm going to do my part to see that we win the 4th quarter. And then finally, you look across the field, and you do that, and you make a statement. We're going to win the 4th quarter. Now, that's what that means. That started with that man. It started with Coach Bryant. It was a pledge. Today, the kids have no clue, most of them. It's the 4th quarter. What does that mean? Hell, you don't need to. They look at the scoreboard and say it's 4th quarter. You don't need that. But there's a reason for that. And, Coach, that would be something that would be something to talk to your kids about. I said earlier that with each of those 4 losses, we were knocking on the door when time expired. One game was particularly memorable. We won the 4th quarter in this game, but we lost the game. And that's what I want to conclude my presentation with tonight. The lesson that my teammates and I learned on that evening. Let me set the stage for you. It was January the 1st, 1965. The national champions were the University of Alabama. As I said, the championship was decided prior to the bowl game. We went to Miami and played in the Orange Bowl. We played against the Texas Longhorns. Joe Namath had injured his knee during practice that week and didn't start the game. As a matter of fact, didn't play a lick in the 1st quarter. We were behind by a few points. I forget, 10, 13 points we were behind at halftime. But we came in at halftime, and he did this quite often. He totally threw out the game plan. And he said, we're gonna make it simple. We went to about 4 running plays and 3 pass patterns, and that was the second half game plan. He said, we're going to throw on first and second down, we're going to run it on third down. Well, we've been doing just the opposite of that. Well, we started coming from behind, and all of a sudden we scored a touchdown. It was fourth quarter. Here we were again on the march. And there was about 2 minutes to go in the clock, and lo and behold, we got the ball first and goal on the 5-yard line. No doubt in our minds about the outcome of this ball game. We've done it so many times before. We run 3 plays, and now we got it on the 1-foot line. Still no doubt. We're going to win the ball game. Joe Namath called a quarterback sneak right off my right side. I went to the line of scrimmage. My blocking assignment said, McCollough, you're supposed to block the guy in the gap with the guard. Y'all got to double team him. Right before the ball was snapped, Tommy Novis, who some of you may remember, was a great linebacker from University of Texas. He walked right up on my nose, right here. If I go over there, he grabs Namath and he never has a chance. So I make a decision. I change my assignment and I hit Novis and knocked him off the ball. Joe went in, hit initially, and rolled in behind me. But we always look for the ball to see if it was in the end zone. Well, lo and behold, I'm in the end zone from my waist up, and Joe is right on top of me, and the ball is in there a good 1.5 feet. So, I mean, we jump up and we're celebrating. We've done it again. One official, this one standing in the end zone, raises his hand and calls it a touchdown. So we think we've done it again. The head linesman come running from the side, and the guy's got the ball. He said, did he score? I couldn't tell. It was a big pile up. He said, yeah, he scored. I took the ball away from him. So I'm standing there listening to all this now. And the guy in the white hat, it was a mixed crew, split crew in those days. The guy in the white hat just happened to be from that other conference, Southwest Conference. He never asked a question. He came in and he took the ball away from the guy that called it a touchdown, put it on the 6-inch line, whistle, first down, Texas. Game over. Well, we protested for a few minutes and a few seconds, but we knew the game was over. And this was the last play. So we go to the sideline, and as we're coming off the sideline, somebody right behind me, I never know who it was, I heard him say, Coach, we scored. Well, with that, I turned immediately and looked at Coach, and he was as close to me, as closer than Emily is. And he said, he's turned to our team, and he said, if you'd have walked in, there'd have been no question about it, would there? He never missed an opportunity to teach you a lesson for life. If he had walked in, there'd have been no question about it. Now, that's the lesson that I learned on the last play I ever played for the University of Alabama. And that lesson is this. If you want to accomplish something, whether it's in football or in life, go beyond what is expected and leave no room for doubt. Because the world's referees might not make the right call either. Leave no room for doubt. That's the message that I took away on the 6-inch line in Miami from my years at Alabama and from the coach, who I think was undeniably the Grandmaster of mind over matter. Though he is gone, his shadow lingers over the football world even today. The things that won games and championships when Coach Bryant walked the sidelines win today in football, in business, and life. Believing in oneself, outworking, outsmarting, and outlasting the competition. Giving that little something extra that others are unwilling to give. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope some of the things that I've said tonight gives you, my fellow club members and guests, a better understanding of the man that I was fortunate to call my coach and my friend. And that in some small way, the things that I've shared might help you enjoy the game of football just a little bit more, now that you'll appreciate what the players and coaches alike go through to win games that we fans brag about after it's over. I also pray that the coming days and years it'll be easier for you to face some of the challenges that may come your way based upon some of the things that I've shared with you. From a man that I still revere to be one of the greatest that ever lived and one of the great teachers of all times. Thank you.